It's another video. Happy Little Skateboards with Lou Ross. This is the first time I've said that, but today's coffee cup is from Spain. I went to Spain, went to Madrid, and today's Thursday. It's probably something like the 21st of May. To reconnect, there we are. Be some connection issues as we go. Hopefully we'll get a good video out of this. Today I'm gonna share this to the Makers Movement group. I'm going to write a message to all these shares talking about warping. There it is. So this is a Facebook Live. For those of you who watch it on YouTube, this is a Facebook Live. And AMA. Ask me anything about warping, sharing it to Makers Movement. There we go. I think that's all I'm going to share to right now because I don't want to. Last thing I want is to be a spammer of groups. If you're an admin of a group and you would like me to share these videos to any of those groups, hit me up. Oh, technical glitch number one. I set this thing up. You guys are on my iPad, and I set it up so you get a nice view of the main room of the shop. I can't read your questions. I'm too far away. If I stand close enough to read your questions, all you get is a good view of some of the knots in my beard. Now, this, I'll talk for a minute now. I'm going to scale through your questions. I'll relocate you guys to another spot that I like to film from. Just on the technical side, also yesterday I downloaded an app called Twitch. It looks great because I can see a huge field that you all can see the questions and comments. And I love the idea of creating videos in which your comments are easy to see and respond to in the video. The other thing I don't really love about Twitch is that Twitch is like all live, so I'd have to really catch you guys the right way. So of course I'm doing this. There was a comment, there was a nice thread yesterday about warping decks that was on Can someone tell me where that was yesterday? Was it Old Dude Skater Crew or Skateboarders Over 40 or somewhere like that? We're talking about warping today. Good morning. And I haven't started yet. It's nice to see some of your names scaling through here. So for those of you who watch this on YouTube after I just share it over, it's disappointing that you don't get to see the bottom of the screen where people are interacting and like that, but we do what we can. So right now, warping, warping, skateboards warping. I want to talk about skateboards warping, not just one time, but many. Hey, is that Columbus, Georgia? Columbus, Ohio? Russ Hemmelgarn? I'm now seeing Mig Fullback. Good to see you on here. I'll do some greetings. Let's do some meet and greet here. Wish I could get a bigger field there. Let's see, ODSC, that's where the thing was yesterday. Chris Gurley, Sean Tierney, Russ. Let's see, Richard Braley, Sam Cook, John Ryan Zander. All right, guys, I'm going to stop doing that right now. So, warping, boards that warp. So, just to clarify, Happy Little Skateboards is not a skateboard brand anymore. This workshop is not primarily for selling you a product. This workshop is now primarily for spreading the word that there is a really fun way, a really satisfying way for some people. Some people will have a lot of fun and a lot of satisfaction buying their skateboard from a skateboard maker. How'd I do? Was I neutral? Was that nice and neutral? Some people would say it's a better way. I have to admit, better is relative. This is different. and the differences are interesting. So I'm planning right now to spend the next year just dealing with the idea of craft-made or maker-made skateboard production. And my idea is that we have a chance to talk about skateboard making in a way that we never have had before, because skateboards weren't made, have almost never been, you could almost never find a person who made your skateboard. Usually you could find a person who stood on the line and did the sanding, or a person who pulled the sheets out of the glue roller and stacked them. You know what I mean? The mass production, and I'm grateful for mass production, don't get me wrong. But now I'll be working to just blow this idea up. We want people to get this idea, to start their own workshops. We want to see 1,000 skateboard makers across the country, to where, you know, when a skateboarder wonders where their next board is coming from, they may have a higher chance of wondering which maker they want to try. And I loved running a brand. One of the things about it I loved when I did Fickle was that I could travel out and skate with the people who rode my work. It was especially pleasant to me because my work didn't tend to be poor. Today I want to talk about what happens, not if, but when one of my boards would warp. I had boards that warped, and every 7-ply construction skateboard is going to flex and change with time. Here's a cutout. There's some glue lines. What's that dark spot? It's just a dark spot. That's all it is. You know, and this is a complicated structure. All of the, I guess, our greatest resident expert on it is, in skateboarding, is probably considered to be Paul Schmidt. He talks about the nanofilament technology. Here's a board that warped. I made this board, and it warped out of the press. This one warped out of the press, and I have to say that is about an 1/8 inch warp. The I-beam on this is almost straight. It's a little high right on this back hip here. This hip, the I-beam is across, the I-beam goes across where your trucks go and across the belly. That's all the places where it's supposed to be lined up, and this one's just not perfect. It's got a twist. When you look at the top side on it, you can see it's not right. Look at that. The top, you really see it. It's got a big slant. And warps are pretty mysterious to makers. Make sure you guys haven't asked me any really good questions here too, because I want to see your questions. Good morning, Jay Judge and Jesse Mitchell on here. All right, good. So warps are pretty fascinating to makers and riders alike. It's not that we don't know why a board warps, even though we don't. It's that in trying to figure out why a board warps, we find such a combination of possibilities and reasons that it just wears you out when you start to look at the permutations of factors that cause the warping of a skateboard. And not every skateboard will warp. Now, there is a difference. Can we make a distinction between warping and twisting? Which seems stupid. A warp is a twist that is caused by who knows what. The board just does it. But usage-based twisting is because you have a toe and you have a heel and you press, and you can catch a picture now and then where a board is corkscrewed right in the middle of a trick because of the torsion that's being put on it. And you get a guy or a gal who go out to do 1,000 attempts at 360 flips, and the board is going to take on a tendency toward the torsion, the twisting of what they're doing. So it's not rare for a board to get a high side and a low side during use. I do a lot of lazy front side grinds. I will not be doing much more than that with the addition of my new Corona weight, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do front side grinds. My board may take on some aspects of that habit. But warping, here's one that warped. Straight out of the press into the curing room. This one warped. And today you can really see it. There you go. You can see this hip is really low. There's a huge slant in this board. And that is about a 3/8. No, that's not a 3/8. That's a 3/16 warp. That's more than an 1/8 of an inch warp. And not terrible along the belly, but I don't like that. As a maker, I don't like that one dip. And then from the top side on this one, it's also a little bit ugly. Oh, it's not as bad as the other one. It's still got a little bit of a dip to it, of a lean. And by the time it's cut, now, here's something interesting. If it's a popsicle shaped board, you can't even tell, because the rounded back, the rounded front hide, because there are no corners and no flat angles, they hide a lot of that warping there. And if it has a mellow concave, it also really hides these kind of warps. And I have entertained for years the thought that boards got made into popsicles. You know, Rodney Mullen invented a shape that he felt was the perfect blend of freestyle and street, and it was Mike V's deck on World Industries. Sorry. And then everything turned round, and round was really good for production, and shallow. Round and shallow were really good for production because they shallow means you can deep stack the presses, and you can have 5 or 7 boards per pressing instead of 2 or 3 or 1, and it also means that a mild concave will hide warping wonderfully. And also in the curing process, a deeper concave appears to warp more, just because those vectors, again, all those vectors of the curve, they all have to dry out and reacclimate. And the more curve there is, the more chance there is for weirdness as it wants to return to flat. So, you know, you get warps, and a certain amount of warping is just part of the process. The fact is, with makers who are making deeper concave boards, you're going to see the warps with the shapes of the board, and you're going to have a view on those warps because of the curve, and that's part of it. There's a certain amount of imprecision that's just going to be part of skateboard making, and a lot of the deeper concave stuff can't hide it as well as the shallow concave and rounded shapes can. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't feel anxious about it today as we share a cup of coffee together. But the warped deck that warps in the shop is my favorite one, because these two are the last two I've had in a long time. I don't make a lot of skateboards, but my rate on warping, because my process is pretty stable, my rate on warping is I get critical warps of maybe one board every 150. Very low, less than 1% of my stuff warps. Big factories with high output, where it's not as stable an environment, they get 7% and 10%, 5% warp rates, and they funnel their warped product into lines that have shapes that hide warping, and they put it out. And it's not wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. A lot of people hear these kind of things. And in the past, I've been pretty strident. I had feelings in the past that were not acceptable feelings. I felt like the industry was tricking us. And now I don't disagree with myself that the industry has tricked us. I just have a more gracious and cynical view on it. That, yeah, that's what industries do. That's why I don't know, I'm not promising anyone anything, but I probably won't buy a board for riding from any mainstream source that's affiliated with that big long-term scam anymore. I probably won't. But I'm not saying I'll never buy one again. Come on, that's not how life actually happens. So here I am. But warped boards, they happen. And it's not if, it's when. This is really difficult. I mean, imagine being a larger skateboard distributor or a brand and having warps happening out there. And one of the ways the industry has dealt with warping is to return, sometimes they'll send you a return postage thing, and sometimes they'll just send you a new board. Sometimes they'll ask you to return it to the shop. These are all that's really great. And when a mass production distro, whatever, does that, I just have to say that's just excellent. There's no drawback to them being in business. It's just terrific. That is what supports skateboarders, and that is so good. Others do other things. I mean, sometimes you get someone like a distro or a brand that will tell you that you should have landed bolts. Shop, I've seen this happen so many times here and there, especially here, where the board fails. Obviously, it's a deck failure, weak laminate, and the customer says, "Hey, this failed first day, second day," and the shop guy says, "Should have landed at bolts." I mean, that's just awful. That is the worst thing. If a discussion about this happens, every now and then you get the Zorlak sticker, "Shut up and skate." Calling into question, when I was ordering boards from a major factory early in Fickle, 2008, I began to ask questions about quality, that we were having just some concerns about quality. We wanted to be able to make sure we took care of the people, the skateboarders who were ordering boards. And I got told that if I was a real skateboarder, I wouldn't care about these kind of things. And that's never good. Anytime you see that, I think they call that gaslighting now or something like that. I don't know what gaslighting means. Yeah, you're not crazy or stupid or less skateboarder if you care about warping. So, when you now another thing is not every warp is like a return to sender type of situation. I mean, I'm gonna pull off some of the ones I just made. Let's see. All right. So how warped is this? It's not warped at all. That's not warped. That's pretty darn good. I'm glad that was lucky. Yeah. Oh, another kind of warp that happens is it leaves the shop straight, gets to the customer, and then it warps. Oh, what a bummer. When that happens with a board, that's a super bummer. And that does happen sometimes. Most warping happens in this room right over here. Can I take you guys to it? Most of it happens when you change from 100% humidity in the press. It's really wet in there. The boards are wet because the glue is wet. Then they come from the press and they come to the curing room, and we go in here into the curing room. And here is where you get a change in moisture. Anytime there's a big change in moisture, that's where you get the chance for things to go sideways or twist or torque. warp, wind. So this has been a little bit of a discussion on warping. I'm just gonna look through and make sure I don't have any questions from you guys, because everything is really, do you have any experience on de-warping a board? There's a question. Now that's a really good one. Wow, that's encouraging. Thanks, Chris Gurley, for asking that. Yeah, I've rigged up a little situation a couple of times with some wedges and blocks, and screwed, bolted 2x4s over a deck to try to restore it, wedged it so it compensated against the warp. And I got it straight again, took it out to ride it, banged it around a bit, and it went back to warped. So that's my experience. I've done that a few times of straightening, and then it kind of re-warps. It's really in that wood. My glues layups are pretty stiff. Even when I'm using Titebond 2, which is an excellent skateboard glue, a little softer than the previous, I still have some of I still have a secret stash of some of the hard glue, the National Casein. I have been using Titebond 2 this week. I love that glue. It's a good one. It's especially cool because at a budget cost, it has a better quality for making skateboards than Titebond 3, which is easily 10, 12, 15 bucks more expensive. Yeah, straightening a warped board is really tough. If you're, now sometimes you get another kind of, so you get the warp out that happens in the curing room, then you get the warp that happens because your feet are on it. That's two kinds of warps, you know, and then you get the third warp, which is the warp that appears out there in usage. Sometimes those warps will come and go. They'll actually come and go. So dry it back out, or let it soak up a little more moisture and it'll go. You have some warps that are mild, and mild warping doesn't count because it really doesn't mess with your skating, because when you stand on it, a mild warp, one of the wheels might be a little bit off the ground, it has a little wobble, and you stand on it and it's solid, and it's not pushing back on you, it's not twisting at your feet, it's not breaking your bushings, just skate it. And if it truly bothers you, you're going to have a lot of trouble, because you're going to go to that wall in your skate shop and you are going to find warps in so much of what's sitting up there. The sunlight hits them. They're stacked in this. This is a ridiculous way to stack skateboards over time. It puts a warp in the boards itself. I've seen racking warp entire walls of boards, and all those warps will relax back out with use. You know, when there's a storage warp, it'll usually relax out with use. I had one shop that stored my boards. This sucked. They stored my boards, and the boards warped. And I came in and I said, hey, I'll replace these. And so they said, no, don't. We ruined them. I didn't go in. I went in, but then I went home. And then another person, one of their customers, went in and saw my boards were warped and sent me pictures of my warped boards. And I reached out to the shop and I said, hey, I'll replace those boards. And they said, no, don't. We warped them. It's okay. And I said, no, I need to replace those. They said, nah, don't. And then the customer who had sent, or the skater who had sent me the pictures, was pissed off that I didn't replace the boards. I should have communicated better, but I was under stress. And then like a year went by, and I finally sent the replacement. I said, please, just pull those and send them back to me. And they said, yeah, we'll send them back to you, which I thought was a real gift, because it was like going to cost them 20 bucks. But they got brand new boards, sent the new boards, and then the shop closed, and all of the boards, the warped ones and the new ones that I had sent, wound up being sold to another shop. and I was just like, man, because I'm small, that's a big hit. Come on, man. And my name was Mud in that town around that too, because warp boards and returns and all that, and the angry guy who I didn't communicate with enough, and really I in the future I'll handle it differently and probably better, probably be much more proactive and clear. But so you got warps that come out of the press, cure warped. You got warps that you put in with your foot just because your feet are standing on them. You got mild warps that you don't have to sweat. You have more severe warps that happen because you left it, maybe you left it in the back of your car, but I make boards that when you leave them in the back of the car, they don't warp. So that board probably has uneven glue application inside it. Somewhere there's a silver dollar sized place where there's no glue, you know, or barely any glue, and that's why when the whole thing gets tighter or looser, it stays, or you know, like that. So that's an irregularity. I put knot holes in my boards. I put knot holes throughout my work. Anytime there's a sheet with knot holes, I bury it in the middle of a board, and I just go for it, man. In fact, I have had such an attitude about knot holes. The 12 of you who are watching this, now 14, you guys are in for a treat. So, for so many years, I've been putting knot holes down the centers of my boards. I'm actually out of veneer with knot holes in it because I focus in on it so quickly because I had been asking from the beginning what's the worst layup I can make, and began making these horrible boards. And I just, with the help of my buddy Sean, I just made what could be the absolute worst board that you've ever seen. Now, I've made boards like that. Was a phone call coming in. I've made boards. Look at how terrible this is, guys. Guys, look. You see this? See this area? See, there's a knot hole underneath here. There's a knot hole. This ginormous piece of damage. This huge piece of damage. These holes here. I mean, this is just awful, isn't it? That's terrible. And I put it all up at the nose. The tail is fairly standard. The middle is fairly standard, but the nose of this board is going to smash. Looking down the sides here, and then the bottom. Wow, look, just, it's wreckage. And you can see this is a matching piece to that one. These guys were brothers when they got scroll cut. And what a mess. Oh, gee, that's just awful. And look at the split. The split on this layer here. That's going to travel down in here. So last night with John Ryan Zander on the phone, I scribed a nice big old 10-inch pig shape on this and bellied it up and scribed that. I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to take some cheap wood filler or even some more PVA glue. I'm going to do a little filling, and I'm going to make this into my skating deck. I'm gonna smash that nose, and I'm gonna wreck this board. And I predict the same thing that's happened when I made others like it. It's gonna be great because I think that the thing that's going right with laminate making in small workshops is time, proper glue application. Not just a lot of glue. You have to do it right. There's a craft. Proper glue application, and then you have to smear the glue. You can't just roll the glue on, you gotta smear it. You gotta get the glue into the surface of the wood, and not too much, especially one-part glues like Type Bond 2. You can't use too much glue, and you have to do it fast enough that it's not setting up before it gets in the press, see? And then get it into the press, and then it has to stay in the press long enough to really set. And these are old school glues. These are old school casein and PVA, and these glues need time. And the new glues, which are scientific, they have all sorts of things they say about them, but the driving emphasis on the new glues is quickness of set. They want, they're down to a 6-minute press time in a lot of places. They cook them with radio frequency, like a microwave, and they set them fast, and they say that's 20% stronger. Not my world. What is my world is I've skated those decks next to decks that I make with classic technique, and I prefer what I'm getting for durability out of this. But yeah, so warping, we're talking about it, and I see gnarly jargon. I'm clicking to see more.
Yes, a number of factors cause where I'm back toe heavy. All my boards take on a twist after a bit. I know need to go front side more. I've done a de-warp once on a collectible, right? Um, it will warp back over time. Even glue application and even pressing, yes. Earthwing put out showing an effective. Yes, I know the Earthwing method of warp. Taking a warp out of something is a good one. Guys, check out Earthwing. They're smart. Let's see. Keeping it hanging above. You can't keep things from warping. I'll tell you that, really. Working you up to an emotional state equals gaslighting. Thank you, Justin Hollis. These are great questions. Thank you guys for coming on here. Can an off-axis cut be mislabeled a warp? Yes. So if the board is cut, okay, and the cut doesn't go straight across, it goes down. This diagonal lines can look like a warp. In this board's case, it has not got an off-axis cut, yet it has, that's not it, it has a lean. There's a lean to it. And it's actually not I wouldn't call it a warp yet, I'd call it a lean. I'd call it a warp when I look at it down here and see, okay, there's the reason why. And it does, it has a lean to it. And you know what, guys, I'm gonna be honest. Anytime I get one of those, I just do exactly what it did. I put it aside, I don't overthink it, because it only happens to less than 1 in 100 boards, and I just keep on making, because if I let myself wrap my head around why this board warped, I'll freak out, because I got issues, man, and I don't have time for that right now. and that's what I would suggest a lot of people do if they're making skateboards, is if you get a warped board, man, you just set it aside and you just make a welcome sign or an open sign out of it or something like that. You just leave it. Don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Just keep going. So I'm going to check the rest of our comments here, and then we're gonna let that go. Oh boy. Oh, it's really nice to see you guys. I have the madness. Forget what is behind. Yes, not that I have attained all this, but this I do, forgetting what lies behind. I press on toward what lies ahead, that for which God took hold of me. I take hold of the upward calling in Christ Jesus. There you go. Gavin quotes one of my favorite scriptures from Philippians chapter 2. You know, a lot of my faith and experience comes into board making down here, and I'm telling you, if it weren't for the grace of God in my life and the sense of acceptance and peace that I've found, I would not be able to keep this up, because I'm a nervous little critter, and it feels good to tell you. Thank you all for spending some time with me here at Happy Little. I can't believe I named it. Such a great name. Happy Little Skateboards with Lou Ross. And this has been a morning installment. I don't know how many of these I'll do per day, but I just wanted to start doing an AMA on warping, since yesterday there was a post on ODSC. Great group. Love you guys. And it was about warping. Sadly, it didn't reflect super well on every single perspective, but I would advise brands and people to be good to each other. Let's be kind to each other, and let's always. We're going to talk about customer service someday. We'll be talking on those, and I see that, Gavin. Yes. Here's another question. I wish I could take time for it. When did you start making boards? I'd love to learn it. I wonder something. Yeah. We can talk about more of these later. I'm hoping to migrate over to Twitch, and somehow work things out where we can have this interactivity where we can, because I'm going to post this to YouTube, and then you'll be able to watch it on YouTube, but you won't be able to see these questions and interact with each other, and I'm disappointed about that. I wanted to do YouTube Live, which keeps that, but I need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube before they'll let me have that interactive opportunity. I think I have, last night I think I had 76 on Happy Little Skateboards. There are two
channels. One is Happy Little Skateboards Historical, and that includes my time with Fickle and doing retail or doing a brand. This is different. The Happy Little Skateboards is the one where I'm doing the work of spreading knowledge and my goal is to have 1,000 or even thousands of makers in America. It's a goal. My aspiration is that I could be part of helping more people make skateboards because I like it better. I just like it so much better. I think it'd be a better world if there was more of it. What? All right. Thanks for being with me, and I'll post this to YouTube soon. Thank you all for being here.